What a view this is right outside our front door. Hello, welcome back to Inspire. Feels like we were just here yesterday. Today, we gotta sleep. Today, we've got some work to do. But it's not gonna be in this area. Nay, today we switch our focus to the other side of this little field right over here. So most recently here in the world of Inspire, we got this hill built right here and we plopped this tree down right on top of it. And to boot, we went ahead and detailed up this field right here. We added some mossy patches, some bushes, and I took great care to pay attention to the detail of the grass mixed in with the ferns, and then having patches of too tall here and there, just to add that nice little touch, that subtle detail that you don't ever really notice unless it's pointed out. And I think we've got this area looking really good. At least on this side of the river. All of that over there is just temporary farming stuff, but this is really where our focus has been. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to get done today, and the first thing we need to do is we need to add some leaves to this tree that we built. I decided not to do it in the same episode that we built the tree, and that was mostly down to just how much we crammed into that episode, just how much we got done with the interior of the house. But I think today, the perfect way to start us off would be to get some leaves going on this tree so that we can really dive into the bigger project of this episode, which will have a lot less to do with this area here and a whole lot more to do with what we have up on the hillside over in this direction, and more specifically, where you see all of these trees just kind of lining up on the edge of this field. So if we stand up here at the base of the tree, we can see the house right here. We look over in this direction, we have a great view of the river that kind of curves off towards the ocean. When it comes to this forest right here, it's not very deep. There's a couple of rows of trees, and then you get another body of water over on that side. And then you have this big hill right here. The forest does go a little further back in that direction. And then over here we have a plains that just swoops around and continues on for quite a distance in that direction. Of course, back this way, the forest continues onward towards the world spawn. Those of you guys who have watched the episodes will know that we came from that direction when we spawned into the world. It's not too far off in that direction, but you gotta follow the river just a little bit. This is also the direction that we have our skeleton spawner in as well. But that's besides the point. Our focus is gonna be on this group of trees right here. And more specifically, removing pretty much all of these trees that we can see in view, probably starting from maybe around here, all the way over to that body of water, and then coming all the way up the hill in this direction, and then swooping around this curve right here. Now, it's important to me that I keep in mind where this biome lies, and that's why I have some coarse dirt on me. I'm actually going to kind of outline it, not with a solid line, but I'm just going to dot some coarse dirt. And this coarse dirt is going to go all the way along the edge of where the forest is before we get rid of any of these trees right here, and that'll help me keep track of where the forest was by the time I get rid of all of the trees. Now, don't worry, I know what you're thinking. The trees are nice, trees are good, and they add a bunch to an area. So you might be thinking, why are we getting rid of all of these trees? Well, it's so that we can do the trees better. This tree is far from the only tree that we're going to be building after all. We've got some grand ambitions for this area over here, and what I want to do is I want to transform everywhere that this vanilla forest sits at the moment into our own custom forest to kind of work as a border to this area of the world. As a matter of fact, let me go stand on our scaffolding over there, which, by the looks of it, has a visitor. Okay. If I could just stand right here, that'd be great if I could just, okay, so, yep. So, yep, okay, can I, okay, yep, okay. So like I was saying, if we take a look at our picture frame from over in this area of the world right here, you can see our house, you can see the big tree that's up on the hill right there, and then you've got a much better view of what the forest looks like at the moment with the river coming in from this way and then curving off to the side. Of course, I mentioned before that I do want to expand this river as well as it empties out into the ocean off yonder. That project will be much later on though. Our focus today, after we get some leaves on this tree to really finish this out and get it to its final state, we're going to remove this forest, we're going to turn it into a custom forest, and it's going to be a border. A border much like this river is right here. As a matter of fact, there's a couple of different areas that I sort of have in mind for this world based on where we've started. Right here, with our house and our big custom tree, including everywhere beyond it in this direction and over in this direction, so long as it's on this side of the river and this side of the forest, this is going to be our fantasy area. So everything I build over here is going to fall more in line with that fantasy theme. It's going to be kind of like the house we built. It's going to have that sort of vibe. The terrain's going to be kind of weird and wacky. And anything we do is going to fall more into that category, right? So the most obvious border is going to be the river right here, which does empty out into the ocean, and we'll make it even clearer in the future when we terraform it to make it look a little bit better. Everything on this side of the river where I'm currently standing, following the border of the river as it goes all the way down in this direction. Of course, we'll have a little bit of work to do to connect the river up with some of the rest of the water. But everything over on this side, this is going to be its own area, which I have an idea for, but I shall not give away yet. At least not until we get started over here. And then finally, we have the third area, and that's going to be marked by the forest. So we're going to have a forest of trees that starts somewhere around here and swoops all the way up where this forest goes and wraps around the corner. Everything over on that side of the forest is going to be the third area. And again, I will not divulge what that style will be over in that area until we get started with it. All we need to worry about for now is that we have our plan to have a couple different sections of the world, or at least of this area of the world, that sort of divide up different build styles. And that way we're not limiting ourselves to one or two different build styles, but we can really take the opportunity to focus on learning different styles across different genres of building. We're not limited to just fantasy, we're not limited to just trees, we're not limited to whatever it is, right? I really want to be able to cover the whole spectrum of building in this world, and I think this is going to be a great opportunity to make it happen. Now, the sun is setting, it's getting a little dark, but I did want to take the opportunity to show you guys what this place looks like at night. It is getting a little dark and the stars are getting up, but I hope it comes through on the video nicely. Just how cozy this place looks at night. Obviously, I don't have any lights anywhere but on the house, and then a little bit up on the hill right there. But I just love the atmosphere of this place, especially at night, and I thought it would be worth showing. But now that the nighttime's over, we can let all the mobs catch on fire and burn up. As a matter of fact, I have recently installed fresh animations, so you probably saw that a little bit on the horse and definitely with the zombie right there, but that'll be a nice little touch for this world as well. So now that we've got daytime back, enough rambling, we're gonna get to these trees, but before we get to these trees, we gotta get to the big tree. This thing needs some leaves. Well, what do you think? Yeah, me too. I think the leaves on this tree actually do quite a lot for the look we have here. I know a lot of you guys really like the tree without the leaves and just seeing the branches there, and I think in its own right, it did look really good seeing the branches and all of the little shapes that you could get, especially from a distance. That being said, I think the decision to add leaves to this tree was the right choice after all. I just feel like it does so much to kind of fill up this area and add that extra little touch of detail to the tree that I feel like it needed, and I think it works perfectly with the type of house that we built up on the hill over there. So I mentioned it in the comments on the last episode, but I didn't say it in the video. My inspiration for this tree right here was actually based on an American elm tree. I had a reference pulled up from just an image that I had found online of a real life version that I was kind of using as a reference point to just sort of see a little bit of how the branches were, a little bit of how the foliage looked, and all of those little details. Obviously, it's not perfect, and I kind of took some of my own liberties into some of the shapes and some of the different decisions that were made with the pathing of the branches and all of that sort of stuff, of course, because at the end of the day, this tree was tailored for this very specific purpose, to sit on this hill and to help frame the picture that includes our house. And of course, even though everything we're building here is meant to be seen at a distance, I gotta show you how it looks up close, because it can look a little bit silly at times, especially from this angle right here. You definitely get some weird things happening with the branches, but at the end of the day, it's been a recurring theme through the episodes up to this point, but we're not focused on how things look up close, and more so from at a distance. It looks like I dropped some scaffolding up there, but that's gonna have to go ahead and despawn. One thing that I did really love about what this tree creates by being all the way up here, as the sun sets, this will provide some perfect lighting for what I want to show you guys, and it's right down here. Do you see this opening right here? It stands out really nice with the brightness level we have set at the moment at 30 brightness, but you can see this huge patch of light that's shining through the canopy, and I think that's a really cool effect to have on the pathway, the very same pathway that you'll be traveling to get to the house or back down to the rest of the world. Lighting is one of the things that we've really been spending a lot of time working on in this world, and I think this is another really cool example of it. As a matter of fact, I think we could get some sort of plant to put right here where the light shines the brightest, and then when we have the darker lighting surrounding this little spotlight, it can almost look like it's aiding a little bit of plant life, like a special flower that's starting to bloom in this area right here. I think that could be one of those tiny details that goes a long way. Now, in the daylight, it's still visible as well, and I do really love that. And it's not that this is any brighter, but it's more so that everywhere around is a little bit darker. If we stand on this patch of moss right here, you can see that there's a bunch of leaves overhead of where we're standing, and it does kind of make sense for where you might have the moss starting to grow. So that was a happy little accident right there. That definitely was not intended ahead of time, but we'll take it. And of course, you get a little bit more of this lighting effect the further down the road you go in this way. Obviously, you start to get free of the canopy up here, and then it starts to brighten up once again. But I think in combination with the hillside we have right here and the tree lingering over parts of the road, we've created a really cool effect with lighting. And hopefully it's not the last effect with lighting that we can create here. It's not just shading in blocks, but it's all sorts of different things, right? It's different colored leaves, it's the lighting based on the canopy way overhead and the road you're walking. All of these little details, all tied to lighting specifically, which can have so much impact on an area and so much impact on a build. If we come up to the base of the tree, though, up on this hill, it gives us a really good view of this forest out here, this vanilla Minecraft forest, and I guess flower forest is what it technically would be, at least this part over here. You can see our little iron farm that we have right there. That might get moved because it was just a temporary setup to get us some iron that I could use for things like minecart rails to get some villagers from the village that was way off in that direction. But all in all, I think it's time for us to shift our focus to this tree line right here and start tackling the next project in this world, which will be first and foremost to remove all of these trees and gather all of the resources. I'm going to try and save all the leaves and all the logs as well, of course. But beyond that, once we have it all removed, we are going to transform this into what I mentioned earlier, which is of course going to be one of our two borders that separates three distinct areas of this world. The river, of course, being the other border, separating the area we're at now from the area on the other side of the tree line, and of course the area on the other side of the river. But this forest can't be built until we take down what sits in its place currently, because these trees simply will not do. So it's time to get chopping. So get one good look at this area, and just like that, we are clear. Wait a second. Okay, much better. Now that we've got all of the trees cleared out up on this hillside right here, I went ahead and did a bunch of terraforming. I got rid of all of the flowers that were out in the open, and as you could probably tell, I did smooth over a lot of the terrain. I tried to keep the natural flow of everything in place, so it's still on a big hill, and we still have that elevated section right there as well. But I got rid of all the choppiness that is the vanilla terrain. There was a couple openings to some ravines and other caves and things of that sort, so I went ahead and filled those in as well. As you can see right here, we have our coarse dirt that's scattered across the top of the terrain, going right up over the hill and disappearing on the other side. In the back, you can see that I didn't quite get all of the trees. I only went up to a certain point, just to about where the hill starts to dive back down on the other side, and I went ahead and left everything else for the time being. That will all get cut out and replaced in the future, but I didn't think we needed to go that far to begin with. We already got plenty of room cut out for where we're going to start building up some more trees, and it should last us quite a while. So here's the fun part where I get to explain exactly what we're going to be doing with this forest and these trees outside of course, it being one of our borders between the 3 different areas of this world. So the fun thing that I want to do with this set of trees up on this hill is that I want it to be a dynamic forest. The amount of trees in the forest is going to continue to grow higher and higher as more people join the community, and more specifically, I think what we'll do is we're going to tie each tree to a member of the Patreon. So in the past, we had uploaded videos about a day early for everyone on Patreon, but we've since switched to live watch parties every time an episode's ready to drop. So since the early uploads are off the table, I decided that we needed to do something else cool for the people who are going above and beyond and supporting the content on Patreon. And what cooler way than for each person to have their own dedicated tree in a forest of trees that's going to sit right over here, right next to where this world began. And I think the coolest part about it is that as more people come into the community and find the videos or find the stream or whatever the case is, and they join the Patreon as well, we could see more trees be sprouted up, each tied to an individual person, until we can fill out this forest bigger and bigger. So with the sun setting on this day, I think we're about ready to start planning where we're going to put all of the trees, and luckily I do have quite a few leaves from chopping all those trees down and making sure that I kept them all. So let's figure out where we want to put each tree. There we go. 26 trees for 26 members of the Patreon, at least at the time of making this video. So your first thought is probably, hey, that's a lot of trees considering it took you a whole episode just to build one. You would be right. However, Mama didn't raise no quitter. Well, there we have it. 23 trees, at least 23 for now. From over here, it doesn't quite look like it's that many. That's just with how the line of it kind of wraps its way up and around the hill there. And I made sure that the first trees that we would put in line were just going to border where this forest is going to be. So of course, it looks a little wonky in that it's just a straight line of trees and there's no depth to it. You go past 1 or 2 trees and all of a sudden you're into another field on the other side. That won't remain the case for long. As we get more people joining up, we'll add more trees, and as that happens, the forest will fill out slowly but surely up the hill in the background and then back down towards the water on the other side. And as a matter of fact, as it continues to expand, we'll even push it back further this way down the side of the river back towards the world spawn as well. I figure tying everyone on the Patreon to this idea right here is a really cool way to have a tie-in to a specific build, and a specific build that has a lot of room for expansion as well. rather than just tying it to something simple like a couple signs inside of a single building or anything of that sort. This is something that feels a lot more a part of the world, and it gives this feeling that each and every one of you guys are sort of a part of the bones of this world, if that makes sense. You're a part of the life within it, each person having an individual tree, and as we go and more people join up, more and more trees sprouting up, each one representing its own person. I think that's a really cool idea, and I think it'll be really fun to see this forest expand as we go. Of course, that does mean in any random episode, no matter what we're working on, if there's more people to add, then I'll have to add it, and I'll make sure to include that in the video as well if there's any more that have to be added. But at least in this episode, it is one of the main focuses just because there were so many to put in place to begin with. And speaking of all the trees that we did have to put into place, I wanted to point out that we have a handful of different styles right here, and this isn't even everything that I had kind of come up with in a creative planning session. You'll see here about 4 different types, I do believe. We have some smaller, some larger, and there are even 2 larger than the largest ones you'll see here that I have not put into place yet. I'm gonna save those for as the forest expands a little bit bigger and we have some more depth to the trees. We'll have some more trees that are sort of centered in the forest area just a little bit better, and once we get a couple of trees in, that's where I'm going to start to put a couple more of the big ones in the backdrop. But since this is sort of the edge of the forest where it sort of trails off into the plains right here, I figured having a whole lot more of the smaller types out front would definitely be a good idea. Along with that, as we zoom in, you could see that we use different leaves for different various parts of the trees as well. So much like I showed you guys with the bushes before, and I may have even shown it with this tree right here up on the hill, it's a combination of 3 different leaves. The darkest areas have spruce leaves. You can maybe see a little bit of the bluish tint kind of down here, and that'll be where the sun is less likely to be hitting the leaves. And then it transitions to birch leaves, and birch leaves are the most common leaves you'll see in each one of these trees, before finally up at the very, very top of each of these trees, you'll get just a little bit of azalea leaves sprinkled in for that nice bright hue to kind of signify where the light is shining in on the trees most commonly. As these were built up, you guys saw a little bit of how I incorporated each tree being tied to a different person, but each one has a little hanging sign on it. Some of them were easier to do than others. All of these small trees that were only 1 wall thick, of course, needed a little jut out to hold the sign on it, and then each tree that was a little thicker, we could actually just put the hanging side to the edge of it. And I think that's a nice little touch, a nice little way to do it. I tried to experiment a little bit with different ideas with item frames and signs and all of that sort, and I think this is my favorite idea of all of them that I tested. It is a little noticeable from a distance, and sometimes it can kind of take your eye away a little bit, but I think as we get some more trees throughout, and especially once we get some kind of pathway going through the area, I think it'll be a really cool tie-in. And from up here on the hill, right underneath where the big tree is, you can see all 26 of our trees all lined up in a row right here, and it doesn't even cover the entire border of where this forest is going to be. We could only bring it up to there, and then it's got to kind of swoosh a little bit towards where the sun is rising in the east in that direction, before we really have the proper border of where this forest is going to sit. You can kind of see it a little bit in the grass color for the biome here as it makes its way all the way up, and of course, I don't have any grass in that area, so there's a pretty sharp cutoff of where I've bone mealed it and where I have not. But I think this is a really cool view to kind of see everything that we just put into place and to really see where more of it is going to be put as the days pass and each episode comes out, and slowly but surely as more and more people get added to the forest. That being done and out of the way though, you may have noticed something as I've been walking around. Right there in my hotbar, I have a set of wings. And that brings me to a couple of things that I wanted to mention or show you guys. First thing is that we just did our very first stream from this world. It's Friday as I speak, and in that stream, we went and found the stronghold and did some end raiding. So as I show you guys some moments from the dragon fight, as well as some of the adventures of looking for some shulker shells and some wings, I wanted to talk about something relating to the wings and also relating a little bit to the tools and mending and all of that sort of stuff. I'd mentioned it previously in some of the other episodes, but I haven't been showing too much of the survival element of the game, and I know some of you guys are a little curious as to how we're going to make some of it work. As a matter of fact, I've already seen 1 or 2 comments asking about how we're going to do certain things like that. So here's my idea for it all, and I apologize if it's a little hard to follow, but trust me and just do your best. For one, I am not going to be using mending on any of our tools in this world, and there's a very specific purpose. The first reason is that I want to be able to distinctly see the amount of tools that we have gone through over the course of working on whatever it is that we work on in this world. By not using mending, every time a tool needs to be repaired, it's going to cost XP. And every time you do that, it gets more expensive to repair it the next time. Eventually, it will get to the point where it says too expensive. At that point, you cannot heal that tool anymore. Well, since enchantments aren't really that hard to come by, nor really are diamonds to replace the tools with, I figure, why not make the second tool in that line or in that lineage, if you will? So whatever tool it is, we can call it Axe. We would move on to Axe 2, and then we would go through its lifespan until it's time for Axe 3. Onward and forward as you go, unless I break a tool. And if I break a tool, the most recent of its lineage kind of signifies how far I made it on that specific tool, at least the name I had for that tool, as a nice little indicator of how long I went before I accidentally broke a tool. That's something I struggle a lot with, is breaking tools on accident. So this could also help as a nice little way for me to train myself on getting better about not pushing durabilities too bad and keeping my eye on things like I should. As you guys have noticed, I've done some funny names for some of our tools. I mean, my Silk Touch pickaxe is called 1 Premium Taco Bell Mild Sauce. And so I think it could be a cool idea to rotate some names throughout all of our tools and armor as we go, and not just stick to one set of names for everything that we have. And that way we can kind of tie in some of your ideas as we go further and further into the world as well. So no mending on any of the tools for that express purpose. I think we can tie that into some of the empty rooms in the house as well. This ties back to some suggestions that I was getting from you guys. But in one of those areas, we can have a dedicated spot for our tool and armor progression, and more specifically, all of the lineages that will eventually come to an end from breaking tools, as a way to kind of look back on the past and see how far we got with, say, pickaxe lineage number 1 or axe lineage number 2 or whatever. Maybe we get some of those tools up to number 7, number 8, number 9 before we break one and have to retire that line into whatever little shrine or chest or barrel or however we do it in the house, whatever area we dedicate for that stuff, that we'll always be able to come back and look at. I think it'll be a really unique way to go about that sort of stuff. This kind of ties in a little bit to my plans for the elytra as well. So I have a set, and I think for the elytra specifically, I will keep mending on there just because that is probably the single hardest thing to go and get more of, and also because I won't be using elytra very often in this world. So anytime I need to go thousands of blocks for a specific material, if I need a specific biome, anything like that, of course, I'll be using elytra to get around. However, whenever I am around builds that we're working on in this world or areas that we have built up, I will specifically be avoiding elytra and sticking to horseback. And the reason for that is so that I can stay as grounded as possible in and around all of the things we work on. I think one of the biggest drawbacks to late game Minecraft is once you get elytra and you start flying around everywhere, you make the world seem so much smaller and insignificant compared to the times before you get those wings and that freedom of flight. By staying grounded and not using elytra in and around all of the builds you've done, you keep that perspective. Nothing feels like it's smaller than it should be. It doesn't feel like you just made the entire world so much smaller, but you keep everything feeling really, really large. And it helps to avoid everything you've built or are building from feeling a little distorted, going between being on ground or being up in the air, or even using things like free cam, which can kind of also have a similar effect as the elytra does. I just really like the idea of being kind of limited to eye level in all cases, and at best, maybe going and making a little scaffolding tower to get a better view of something. The way it just forces you to sort of keep everything in that perspective, I think is really valuable, especially in the context of a building world like this. Anyways, there's a couple of things that we need to get caught up on. First and foremost, I asked you guys in the last episode for some name suggestions for our horse. And I think of all of the name suggestions that we got, my favorite came during the premiere. I believe it was in the premiere, and it was the name Horse Of Course. Now, live me does not remember off the top of my head who it was, but I'm gonna put up on the screen right about now who had suggested it. Well, what would we have here? Another instance of live Cody needing editing Cody to swoop in and save the day. Typical. And no, it wasn't from the premiere. It was from the first stream in this world that we were doing towards the end of it. It was Kaylandria, so credit Kaylandria to get credit for the name, of course, no pun intended. And I thought that was an incredible name for our horse, given what we have named all of our other tools, just being random thoughts that come to mind whenever we think of them. And as such, we can go ahead and name tag him right here. So we officially have Horse Of course. Now, to be fair, in full transparency, this is probably not our final horse, but he'll always be special because he's our first. There will come a time in the not so distant future where we get to some good old horse testing. Because if we're going to be avoiding using elytra around here for the most part, we're going to need a horse that can go fast and a horse that can jump high. Now, a horse, of course, can do both of those things pretty respectfully, but he's not the best in either one of them, so there's still some potential to be had. No matter what though, you can count on horse, of course, being safe at all times. We'll make sure to keep him around because he is indeed special. As long as he doesn't go suffocate in a 2x2 hole like Matt's horse did, that was a little unfortunate. Now, the other thing that I need to get caught up on is only something that you guys would know of if you are in our Discord. About a week and a half ago from the time of recording this, I went ahead and asked some of you guys in the community to submit some of the builds that you've done that you're proud of and would like to see showcased on this series. After all, this series is called Inspire, and it's about seeing and really taking in all of the different techniques and all of the different styles from various players across the community, not just from me myself or not just one specific style, but really being able to absorb everything and find inspirations from all kinds of places. And I figured what better way to do that than to be able to showcase some of the stuff that you guys create that you're proud of and would like to see make an appearance on the video. So we have a couple of submissions since I asked. The first one is from Hey Norm with this lovely little desert build on the water right here. And the first thing that I noticed was the custom cacti using the bamboo blocks. I would never have thought of that in a million years, and that detail is probably my favorite in this entire image. That is such a cool touch. I absolutely love the custom cacti. Overall, this is a really cute build, and I think it's a very nice take on a desert style build. I think this kind of thing would be perfect for like a desert village renovation. That's kind of the vibes I'm getting here. The next one I have to show you guys is this absolutely gargantuan cake. I want to say birthday cake. This is absolutely enormous from Miss Luna Joe. I think my favorite detail here is the use of the different colored glazed terracottas for all of these accent pieces around the edge, getting a good use out of every single one of them. Even that pesky magenta glazed terracotta. We actually have two images here that come in from Happy Stunt, who created a very cool scene in this first one with what I would guess to be some dinosaurs. To build on a scale like this and to still successfully do these organics, I think is really cool. I also love the trees that were put in here. They're very different from the usual custom trees that you might see. So points for creativity in that regard. If any of you guys watching have builds that you're proud of and would like to see featured on here, you can absolutely join in on the fun by being a part of our Discord. I'll make sure to have a link to all of our links as a whole down in the description below. And who knows, you might just see one of your builds featured in here on one of the upcoming episodes. Now that most of the aesthetic planning for this video has been done, there is something else that I want to get to, and that will involve sheep. Now, pardon how noisy it is in here. There's a lot of villagers, there's some bees, there's a lot of things going on, but I specifically have all of these sheep down here in a hole, and it's time to get these guys moved out so we can get some wool production going, specifically wool of every color. Using different colored wool in various builds as a form of texturing or shading is something that we're going to end up doing quite a lot of in this world. And so I feel like it's one of the more important things to get producing pretty quickly here. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, all of the redstone that we do in this world is just going to be us trying to figure it out. We're not going to be using any YouTube tutorials for other people's designs, and no matter how inefficient or bulky it is, I want to be able to figure it out on my own, utilizing knowledge from creating different people's designs in the past, as well as just what I understand about different blocks in the game and how they function. I feel like that's a fun way to kind of force yourself to learn a little bit about redstone and the more technical side of the game, of course. So we're going to give it a go with a sheep setup. Alright, so I've made my way a little bit further out from where we've been working so far. As a matter of fact, we are on the other side of that forest border, which of course will extend all the way out here in due time. And this will be one of the two other areas of the world in terms of build style. Now, I'm still not yet going to reveal what the style will be over in this area. However, I do know that long term, I want whatever sheep setup we do to be in a build that we put out here in this specific style. So for now, I'm not going to worry about the build that goes up and around it, but more so get the functionality down so that in the future, when we're ready to actually do the whole build, we already have the functionality, we already have all the sheep, everything set up and ready for something to be housed over top. Okay, so my idea for how we're going to do this, again, just based off of sheep farms I've done before and seen other people do, and then just trying to kind of apply what I know into trying to make a farm work, we're going to figure something out here. I'm thinking we'll probably do 32 different setups here. I'm thinking probably 2 of every color. And as a matter of fact, now that I'm thinking about it, we could probably even limit this down to like 16 individual pods with 2 sheep in each one. I almost wonder if that would be a better way to do it, especially to utilize less space overall. So I think we're gonna go ahead and plan for 16 individual pods, and that might save us some materials as well. But I think we'll keep it pretty simple. We'll probably use a lot of glass like this and keep them in little pods like so. We definitely want to make sure that there is as many pieces of grass touching the base grass block as possible. Also, that is a fantastic sunset with the silhouette of our house in the background there. So if each of the colors contains 2 sheep in a pod like this, the first thing that we need to do is detect when the grass is eaten. And of course, the simplest way to do that would be with an observer. Now, since we want there to be as many pieces of grass around the base block as possible, I think I'm gonna put the observer underneath the grass block facing up into it. Wait a minute. We need an output system. Well, this isn't gonna work. Okay, so take 2. We have our pod right here. On this side of it, we are going to have our observer facing the grass block that is going to be changed. And now, just to make sure that we test that the signal works, again, change the state of the grass, and we're good. We're getting a signal. Very nice. Okay, so we have that outputting a signal. Now, I think we can just put a dispenser right on top of it, and we don't even need that for this to trigger the dispenser. So we can go ahead and plop something in here and go ahead and update the block. All right, so it would appear that we do need to power it. It may be a very simple solution. We could get it to power that block and then maybe just put a redstone dust right here. And then when we update the block in front, we get the output, and that could do the shears. So something really simple, just another block from the observer and then a dust on top. I wonder if I even need the redstone dust there in the first place for it to output, or if the block does enough. I think I do need the dust right there, but we're gonna try it. Yes, okay. So 1 redstone dust back here, and that's about as compact as we're gonna get for this style. So we have this set up. We're obviously gonna put something up top to keep the sheep in, maybe just a trap door right flush with the glass up there. And then we need to take care of the output as well. So what I'm thinking for that is that we are going to start with a normal hopper down here going into some form of storage. I like barrels because they're not entities and they lag a little bit less when in bulk. And we'll go ahead and get a minecart rail, and we'll put a minecart hopper on top of it so that it sits just high enough to pull anything through the full grass block. All right, we got our stuff. Rail and hopper minecart. Now, just to test it out, I'm gonna go ahead and throw something up top that gets pulled in. And one more thing I want to test is if we don't have a rail and we just have the minecart sitting like so, it does not pick anything up. So it's important that we have it on a rail so that it elevates it just high enough into this block so that it can pull things through the top. For any of you guys who are wondering, I totally knew that, of course, and it was just to demonstrate how it works. So with that in mind, that's kind of the repeatable pod that we're going to be doing here. About as bare bones, as simple as possible. There's surely way more efficient. However, it works, and I didn't need to watch a tutorial. So we have it going into 1 barrel. We're going to actually feed this through a couple. Because I'm not using chests, we don't have as much storage as we would with a double chest. So I'm going to give this a couple buffers. And I think what I'll end up doing is I will have individual spots for each final output color-wise, rather than having it all feed into one big system where all of them are combined. You know, with the design we have in place and how far down we're going to keep this line of storage working, we're gonna push this up into the air just a little bit. Actually, you know what? I changed my mind. Instead of doing this for storage and keeping it pretty basic in early game, why not try my hand at doing something a little crazy and off the wall? So get rid of all of this. Also, yes, I realized what I had put in place right here with a barrel underneath a hopper, but without a hopper that would go into the barrel. It was a test. I was testing you to make sure that you would notice it. Anyway, get this fixed back to this state right here where we have everything outputting into here. Instead of going into barrels, we are going to have this output into a dropper. Now, when we get wool from the 2 sheep that will be up here, we'll go ahead and say that these are going to be the white sheep. When white wool gets sucked through the system right here and goes right into this here dropper, we're going to set it up so that it outputs the items into a water stream. Now that water stream is going to pick up all of the items from this module, the next module, the next module, all 16 modules. And as it goes through the water stream, it's all going to combine and funnel into our storage. So I know I just said that we weren't going to combine everything, but I changed my mind. And by having it go through a water stream, we can also have it go up a column and get itself a little higher in the air without having to build everything so far up. We can basically just item elevator everything through a bubble column. We can have it then go into a wall of barrels with hoppers on the back to fill everything up in a nice and compact fashion to where we don't have to do a whole line of hopper barrel, hopper barrel, hopper barrel, just to avoid using double chests. So this does mean I am going to need to gather some ice and other such things that I did not prepare for here, but I think we can go ahead and save the stream for last and go ahead and just get all of these modules built up to this point right here with the addition of something to time our dropper output as well. So maybe we work on that real quick. And I think how we can do that is by using something called a comparator. Now the comparator reads what's in here, and I think all we need to do is we need to have it read whenever a single piece of wool is in here to then send a signal back to the dropper to then tell it to drop the item into the water stream. So I think the best way to do this would maybe be to have it facing like so. I believe that's how. Yes, you have to face it that way so that it reads what's in the dropper right there. You face it this way, you place it facing this way so that the double-pronged edge is facing the item that you want to read, the block that you want to look into. Could be a barrel, a dropper, anything like that. And now we have power going to the comparator. So now we need this to cycle back into this to make it shoot things out. Okay, so I've been messing around with this for a lot longer than I would like to admit, and I've decided to move the comparator up to read the hopper so that I could get a line of items that would trigger the dispenser on, or the dropper on the same line without having to go left or right. Now, it does work in theory. If we have one item in here and another item comes through here, it does spit that one item out. However, for those of you guys who know redstone better than I do, you will already know that if you have multiple items in here, it'll trigger once and it will stop triggering until there is no longer one item in the hopper because it outputs the same speed that it inputs, and so it's not going to continue to send a signal. That is a problem because we're gonna at times have multiple pieces of wool coming through and we don't want there to build up a backlog in the dropper. So I think it might be time to break out the pistons and observers. Okay, so here's where we're at. I have the classic push a piston with an observer into another observer, and then you get the constant observer ticks powering a target block that then powers the dropper. So it does work if I were to put 5 slabs in there. They all get shot out. There's a couple things right here. For one, I don't have any slime balls, so that needs to be a sticky piston before we are settling for the final state of things. For two, I, for the life of me, could not figure out how to get this signal to then double back underneath and then power this dropper from down below. I don't really understand how to make that constant tick go back and then travel upwards effectively without using anything to the left or right so that it would be perfectly tileable. And I think that's just going to be a limitation of my redstone knowledge as it stands at the moment, and something that I'll have to kind of pick up on in the future. By all means, for any of the redstone experts out there who know how to make a signal like that travel upwards, please let me know, because that would be some really useful information to have. But in the meantime, this does at the very least work, and with how we're going to tile it, it's not going to be such a perfect tile that this is going to be a problem. We'll be able to make this work all the way throughout. I just need to get at least 16 slime balls so that I can do that for each setup, have one piston doing this. And then once I have the materials, we can go ahead and repeat this 15 more times and then focus on doing the water stream into the storage. Another test. So I have a sticky piston here, but the astute viewers will know, of course, that without a repeater, It will simply do this, and that is weird and not normal. So the solution to our issue here is to push this back by 1 and then put a repeater between the comparator and the piston. And we're gonna have a little bit of a delay on it so that once this triggers, it keeps those active until there's nothing going through this anymore. All right, I've got these moved, and then we'll go ahead and put a repeater right into there, and we'll give it a 1-tick delay and see if that's enough. Close. We can do better. 2-tick delay. And again, with 10 planks. 3-tick delay. Flawless. And just like that, we have figured it out. This is our perfect maximum efficiency, as compact as possible, sheep shearing redstone contraption, ready for some water flows. I will not be taking any arguments about making it more compact or more efficient. Now, I have 33 slime balls. Here's to hoping that it's enough, but I guess if we're only doing 16 modules and it only takes 1 sticky piston per, we should have plenty. So I think at this point we're ready to get 15 more of these modules laid out, and I think what I might do is I'll put 8 in a line here, and then on the other side, I'll probably mirror 8 more going down the same route as well. We can have them both empty from either side into one combined water stream, and that water stream can go into whatever storage we have for all of the wool in here. Why, yes, I did totally notice that I had 2 blocks stacked on top of each other, thusly not allowing anything to be pulled through the hopper right here. This was, of course, completely intentional design that I did not overlook one bit. It's a simple fix, really. I just need to move everything up by 1 block so that this is pulling from the actual grass block and I don't have this extra nonsense block right there. All right, I think I've got a setup here that's gonna work very nicely for us. I did go ahead and try and compact it just a little bit when I mirrored it so that we would just have the nice little 1 block for our stream to go all the way through in this direction here. And I think I'll have it empty out over on this side and eventually go into wherever we put the storage. Now again, I want to have all of this in a future building that we're going to kind of erect around this setup right here, and so I think we're gonna have the storage room on the back side over here, so we can take whatever water item flowing system we have, we can have it go over here, bubble column up, make its way out, and then kind of double back in this direction here on this side of kind of the redstone setup. And we can have our storage setup kind of line itself in front of all of this so that we could walk in from, say, this direction over here. We have the whole wall of all of the wool together in one big hodgepodge storage collection. It's not going to be sorted or anything, at least to start with. It'll just be a big wall of all kinds of different colored wool all mixed together. But again, we're not going to do the facade for this building until much later when we're ready to start working on this area of the world. For now, we just need to start cooking up the wool itself because I have a feeling we're going to be using a lot of it in builds going forward. I have run through and tested it though, so this setup has been mirrored all the way throughout. We've got 16 total nodes. I've made sure that any items that end up on the grass block up top are pulled through and dispensed out as they should be. So that's all good to go, and now we're ready to get our water item flowing thing going. And I have some ice, so I think the next thing I'm gonna do is go and get a little bit of glow lichen to put in there as well. It was on this day that I realized I brought ice, not packed ice. Regret. Packed ice acquired, and now we can finally work on our item line here. So I think I'm going to put the item line a little bit lower down here so that whenever items get shot out of the dropper, they can hit the other wall and just kind of fall into the stream down below with hopefully not too much issue going on. We're going to have water flowing on top of the ice so that the items can move a little bit quicker as well, and of course we're going to have it flowing in this direction. All right, so I've gone ahead and put the ice down. We've got the water flowing on top, and just for good measure, I put the glass up on the sides to fill any of these gaps 2 blocks high, and then of course you have the line down at the bottom just so we can try and keep everything in here as well as possible. I went ahead and did a couple water flows intermixed by these glow lichen pieces, and with the ice keeping everything flowing, I think every item should make its way all the way down here without issue. Obviously, with the ice, as you can see, if I just stand here, you kind of keep your momentum a little bit with how you just kind of slip along the surface. And I think the same applies to items as well. And that's why you can get away with having the gaps between the water flows. Now, there's every chance in the world that I have no idea what I'm talking about here, and this doesn't work whatsoever. That being said, I have confidence this will work perfectly. So we have all of our items flowing into here. It's gonna hit this last glow lichen and go into this bubble column. And now that I think about it, I think this needs to be a sign instead of a glow lichen. And that is so that we can still do water source blocks here without having it destroy the glow lichen down here. I think we can, of course, do a piece of glass right here, and that should be no issue. Though we might have some items get caught on top of it, so we may go ahead and just double up the signs right here, and I think we'll still be good to do water source blocks. So it's a little while later, and I think I've got something that I'm pretty happy with at the end of the day. So it's not perfect. I was experimenting a lot with the water flows and getting the items to do certain things, and this is what I ended up with. We got the bubble column, of course, that sends items up. And then we've got the water that sends it along its way over here. And then finally overtop the hoppers right here. Now, I went as far as to go like 6,000 blocks for a bunch of sea pickles, because I thought I would need those for like positioning items along here, just because I remember people doing that before. And I have no idea in what use case that would be, considering I just have water flowing along the hoppers here, and it seems to work well enough. I think it's probably, if anything, if I needed the items to go any further than one, water bucket worth of length, then I would probably need to have it continue on ice and then use blocks to position the items and then have hoppers in certain spots. However it is, I'm not too sure, but of course I'm trying to do all of this without watching a tutorial, so this is just based on trying to figure it out and then trying to use things I remember from other things that I've seen people do. All in all though, this is a perfect time for us to go ahead and test this, so I'm gonna go ahead and grab 16 redstone torches, and we have 16 different spots right here where we're gonna have some sheep sitting in there. So in theory, I'm gonna drop one torch in each spot. That'll be all 16 of them. They're going to feed through the system and wind up probably in that very first barrel, since they're not going to be enough to start filling up the rest of it. That's just kind of there for bulk storage. And so hopefully, if we've done all of this right, and I drop a torch in each one of these things here, we can see all the way down at the bottom that the torches are making their way through the water streams. It looks as though they are ending up in the bubble column and then onward, and they might have already all done that. So if we jump down below, we do indeed have 16 redstone torches, which means any wool that gets sheared from up in those areas will also end up down here. And of course, if there's enough of it, it might skip a hopper and go to the second row, or even if it fills up, it'll fill up from here all the way to here at the very last. It'll kind of go in reverse of how you might read a book, and that's just because I have it coming in from the right side instead of the left side, as well as the fact that we have the hopper set up like this. So the hopper below is going to take priority over the barrel. You can see how each hopper faces into a barrel. Now, it wants to go into the barrel, but if there's a hopper below, that is going to take precedence over putting it in the barrel. So the item would go in here. It'll go here before it goes there. It'll go here before it goes there, all the way down until it's at the final one, and then it'll finally go in. If that's full, this will fill that before it fills that barrel, and so on and so forth, right? So it goes from here up, and then here up, and of course sometimes we'll have a bunch at once, and that might skip over a hopper because of it, and that's where we might get some others filling some other barrels. Anyway, now that we've got this contraption set up with a little bit of a storage wall to boot, is officially time for the hard part, and that is to get all of those sheep into each of those pods. Ideally 2 sheep in each pod, and each pod representing all 16 colors. Well, we've got the whole thing built. I've got all of the sheep in each of their individual chambers, and I've got them all dyed up. We know it's working. We can see, I think we heard a little bit of redstone go off just now. We can see a little bit of the wool make its way across the ice and into the storage system. That's all good and well. One thing I did have the thought about, though, is if I put grass up on these corners, could it spread diagonally to the block that the sheep are standing on, therefore allowing more instances of potential grass spreading, therefore speeding up the system as a whole. So I went ahead and went into my creative test world, and I set up one little chamber, and I only had grass on the diagonals outside of the glass. Lo and behold, it did spread to the dirt down there. So I think what I'm going to be doing is going around on each of these individual pods and adding this grass block just kind of elevated up and then out a diagonal for each of these chambers. And what this is going to do is give the maximum amount of potential grass spreading to the block that the sheep are on to, of course, keep that dirt block grass and therefore edible for the sheep as frequently or as often as possible. And just like that, we've got all the diagonals covered. And I think what this might also allow us to do is we could potentially breed up these sheep in each pen and go up to 3 or 4. Now, I don't know if we'll need to go that crazy and get that much wool production rolling. I guess if we end up, you know, planning out a build that has just oodles and oodles of wool blocks, then sure. But I think 2 in each module for now is probably plenty just for our purposes alone in this world. You could see a little bit of the wool going into the system right there. But overall, I think this is plenty good enough, and this should, by all means, do the trick. It's obviously a little bit bulky. I could probably have refined it down somehow, but at the end of the day, I accomplished what I set out to do here. I did not have to watch a tutorial for this. This is just using information from past farms that I've seen people build or that I have followed along with myself, and then whatever knowledge I have of the game and all of these redstone components and trying to come up with a way to make it all work together. So I'm pretty proud of the fact that I was able to do that without having to be walked through how to set up something like this, and I was able to just kind of arrive there on my own. Obviously, it took a lot longer than if I just loaded up a video and found the most efficient sheep farm. I could have done this a whole lot easier, but it is pretty rewarding to be able to do this all just based on being given the pieces, but not really the directions per se, and then just kind of working with it until you figure out something. We did it. We finally made it to the end of the episode. I was feeling at times like this one was going to run on for absolutely forever. But we were able to get everything done that we set out to do today. There was so much that we fit into this episode, but I'm glad that we got it all done, and I'm glad that we were just barely able to keep it under an hour long total. And by all means, I wouldn't expect future episodes to be quite this long, maybe one here or there whenever it just kind of happens that way like this episode did, but hey, we'll take it. I know there's a lot of you guys who like long episodes anyway. Gives you more content to watch throughout the week. Before we're out of here though, I do want to say, as always, special shout out and thank you to everyone who supports the content over on Patreon. It's your guys' support that allows me to continue to do this full time, whether it's the YouTube videos or streaming over on Twitch, so really it means the world from all of you guys. And I'm excited to see the forest of Patreon trees grow bigger and bigger as we continue this series and welcome more people into the community. For those of you guys who are watching this on release day on Wednesday or even the day after on Thursday, don't forget that this Friday I will be streaming from this very world. I haven't fully decided on what we'll do in that stream yet, so you'll have to tune in and see. But every Friday we follow up our Wednesday releases with a live stream from this world, and of course I do that over on Twitch. That link will be in the description along with all kinds of other stuff. But I do believe that's all from me for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. By all means, if you enjoy the content that I'm putting out, if you're enjoying this series, drop a like, leave a comment, and make sure to subscribe so you know better when I release future episodes. I'll stop rambling for now, though. I will see you guys next week, and I hope you left today's episode feeling just a little bit inspired.